Perfect. Okay, so we will start with the third session of the day. So welcome everyone. 2 sessions are done with. The third is about to begin in our BEDA Design Forum. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has already participated in the day. I hope there are many of you who are still joining us for the third session. And in case we have new participants in the audience, just a reminder that everyone is an expert here. We have invited some experts to be with us specifically, but you in the audience, you are not actually an audience, you are a group of experts, and we really wish you to take part in the discussions and interaction actively. So feel free to come up with your thoughts whenever you want to share them. The best way to start sharing them is to write your comment or question in the chat. And Fabrizio, can you wave your hand? Say hello, maybe.
Hi, everybody.
Fabrizio
third session.
Thank you. Fabrizio is a BEDA board member and an expert on many things, but also including design education and inclusive processes. Fabrizio has kindly promised to follow the chat. So whenever there's interesting interventions in the chat, Fabrizio can join the discussion and ask you, any one of you who wants to comment through the chat first, to open your microphone and take part in the discussion. And this actually through the whole session. So hope to see active interventions today as well. The third session is about us going international. It will be related to the key topics of today, the global challenges we are all dealing with. We have our own approach in Europe, or many approaches in Europe, of course, in relation to global challenges. Climate change is obviously one of the primary ones at the moment. New European Bauhaus initiative is a reaction to that. And I know that many of you have already been actively taking part in the Bauhaus initiative, but that's not obviously the only initiative or only reason for us to be here and to discuss how could the design community, the global design community as well, react to and collaborate in creating the necessary transformation in our world, obviously often related to the green transition, also related to the digital transition, and many others as well. But this is sort of the scope of our session today, and maybe I can pass the word to Isabelle. We will be co-moderating the session. Isabelle Verriac from Cité du Design, and myself, I'm Päivi Tahko-Kallio, the president of BEDA, still for 2 days. So, Isabelle, go ahead.
Thank you, Päivi. Just a few words about technical point. This session is recorded, so we will use some part to improve our website. We are also in live on YouTube, and you could choose the language to follow this session, French or English, with the interpretation at the bottom, at the bottom of the screen. So this session, we will discuss how to go outside Europe. This morning, we have discussed about the New European Bauhaus initiative, how to build, how to deliver, how to create collaboration, consortium. But now the question is how all the communities could be involved in this initiative, how we could go outside Europe, inspired by other examples coming from outside Europe, from international point of view, and also how what we are doing in Europe is a model, a pilot for all the world, because global climate change is a global question, and we need to work at a global dimension scale for that, and how design community could have an action at this global context. So we'll have 4 experts with us to share their view on this question with you and to engage the discussion. I would like to introduce first Alok Nandi. Alok, you have a lot of a lot of mission in your life. You are managing director of spread design, Architempo, but you are also a past president of IxDA. You are entrepreneur, strategic author, speaker, educator. Narrative is your special action. So if you could share with us how the community of designers and activists could have a role in this initiative, and what is your view on that in order to start the discussion on this topic?
Thank you, Isabelle.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabelle. Hi, Päivi. Thank you. Hi, everyone. And thanks for having me here. So you already had number of hours of Zoom, and we'll try to make that as engaging and as interactive as possible. And Isabelle, thanks for reaching to me with this complex question. I will first take a few seconds to tell that I'm outside Europe and inside Europe, as Päivi and you mentioned how to go outside. So I'm based in Brussels, in Belgium, and I'm quite active within, but also outside. I'll take 2 examples of community-related activities which can help us to think about different modalities of engagement. Engagement of communities of designers, but also engagement of designers talking to what we call non-designers, though we could have a debate about that. As you mentioned, Isabelle, I'm the past president of IxDA, Interaction Design Association, and we are about 120,000 designers who come from the area of what we call interaction design, user experience, user interface designer, the digital world. And IxDA was born as a distributed organization, 120,000 members, 200 chapters on the planet, and it came bottom up. What do we mean by bottom up? You raise the hand, you want to have conversations, you set up a group, and the dynamic of conversations allows to have learning and sharing knowledge. So this example of a community, which in 2003 was only conversations through mailing list, in 2008, it became a real live conference where people met. And after 15 years, it's gathering 120,000 persons who are discussing about design, the future of society, all the threats we are having, climate change, Anthropocene. All these complex topics are shared into conversations in communities. In cities like Barcelona, Paris, Helsinki, in Europe, but also New York, Los Angeles, Singapore, New Delhi. And what we saw through all these dynamic conversations is that our job at IxDA was to create conditions for those conversations to flow in. And that's a complex exercise. How do you set up systems where conversations can take place and where people can exchange knowledge and hopefully go into projects? Remember, we are designers. We want to be hands-on. And the aim of designers is to learn and to act. And at IxDA, my job as president with all the board members and all the community leaders was to make sure things are flowing. I'll give you two examples. One, which is we organize an annual conference. The annual conference gathers 2,000 people. What is 2,000 versus 120,000? For us, there was a design problem. How to make sure that people could be engaged, the 120,000, in different capacities, and not reserve the conversations to only 2,000 people attending the real life event. And we came up with what we call a distributed set of conferences taking place the same day, but in 40, 50, 60 places at the same time. And that is what we call the World Interaction Design Day. The next one will be on 28th of September. And we have a theme, a guiding theme. Like the theme of the next one will be solidarity and transformation. And this allows the local leaders, the community leaders, to take that as a guiding theme and come with speakers, with workshops, with hands-on activities. And our job is to make sure that the platform allows to feed all these bits and parts of conversations and help others to get inspired. So I'm quickly sharing this as an example, and I'm sure we'll go deeper into that, but it gives you a concrete example of hands-on distributed set of activities, talking and tooling and trying, which can help New European Bauhaus and related action plans to think about ways of collecting what we call creative energy. I'll give you an example now from another angle. Both Isabel and Päivi, you have been Pechakucha speaker. I'm the founder of Pechakucha Brussels. When I launched Pechakucha Brussels in 2007, there were 80 cities on the planet doing Pechakucha night. Today we have 1,200 cities. Pechakucha as a format, and for those of you who don't know that, it's a format where people have 400 seconds, 20 seconds time 20 images, 400 seconds to tell a story. And Pechakucha allowed us to look at the creative energy of a city. 1,200 cities sharing stories about projects, works, activist views, and stuff like that. And in Brussels, from 2007 till pre-COVID, I had more than 1,000 speakers. And looking at what the topics were shared by those speakers, fascinatingly, topics like urban design, sustainable development, climate change, engagement, data privacy, all these were shared in 400 seconds in bits and pieces. What does it help us here as a group is to think about how to collect bottom-up stories and get inspired, and then see some ripples coming out of that. What I have seen through my 10, 11 years of Pechakucha organization is that some projects became concrete because people met at the Pechakucha nights I organized. So what I'm trying to share through these two examples is conversation leading to project is feasible, and we have tried and we have experimented and we have seen concrete examples. This comes into resonance with two of the topics which were discussed end of this morning, which were mainstreaming is a challenge. How do we mainstream design is something which keeps me busy for, as you mentioned, Isabel, for 20 plus years. How do we make sure that people are aware of what design means? Because as a community here, we are all design addicted. But as an educator, when I teach or I speak about design, I know that some people still confuse design and decoration. How are we going to break that paradigm is a complex game. How are we going to make sure that people get aligned on notions of design which are speaking about the design spectrum, systems view, digital, strategic view, design as what I say in my workshops and my co-design sessions, design about the expression of intentions and alignment of those intentions to make things happen. So these are some of the key words that we see in the conversations in our international conferences, in our workshops, in our distributed set of activities. So I leave you now with those two examples. Pechakucha, it's written Pechakucha, but in Japanese it's pronounced Pechakucha, and Pechakucha means blah, blah. So you have from blah, blah conversations, concrete projects coming out. And you might check pechakucha.org and you'll find more than 10,000 inspiring stories, which can feed the next, which can help you to think about the future. Now, one of the series of conversations we saw this morning was engagement, trust. How do we build trust? How do we make sure that people get on board? And I remember that expression that you had in the morning where small urban places allow to have better trust. Yes, scale is a complex issue. And for me, rather than scale, maybe we should begin to think about distributed systems of multiple scale rather than looking at a meta scale. That is my provocation to all of us here to continue the conversation, because I guess we'll try to connect climate change, which is a meta abstract topic, to design communities, to hands-on projects. How do we connect the dots? How do we make sure that we are in a position to zoom in, zoom out, and come with concrete prototype stuff which can create trust? Hope these kind of insights are getting into the directions of what you want to see in these conversations. Thanks.
Thank you, Alok. Great intervention, great start for the discussion. Fabrizio, may I quickly check, is there already any questions or comments in the chat?
No question for the moment. Don't be shy, people.
Good. Thank you, Fabrizio. Really, I totally agree. Don't be shy, because these issues Alok just raised, I think and thank you for reflecting back to the first two sessions as well. That's very valuable. Maybe at this point, if this is okay, Isabel, I would like to ask something from Alok. You mentioned, or you described two types of case studies, IxDA and Pechakucha, and what they bring to my mind is, because they are both related to digitalization in a sense, they are possible in a way because of digitalization. Am I not correct? And for me, they connect to the good parts of digitalization. They expand inclusion. They are inclusive approaches. And when anything is inclusive in the sense we are now talking, it also means that they contribute to democracy. I know this is a big question, but if you have something to share with us in this issue, democracy, in our Western democratic systems, democracy is often representation. It's not direct democracy, but what digitalization makes possible is more direct democracy. So how do you see this? Because this has an implication in relation to what the impact of these interventions can be and how they relate to development of democracy.
As you mentioned, Päivi, it's a big question. I'll try to address that from a designer point of view. And I'll reflect on one intervention you had this morning, which is one of the person of NEB was mentioning, I think it is Vera, if my memory is good, who was mentioning one of the challenges going out there on the street to get insights. And I was reflecting that in terms of How can we do that using digital tools? And how do we do that today? And you are pointing into one of the complex sweet spot of digital life. What we are doing with IxDA, or what I see with Pechacha, is the good part of what digital can enable into generating interesting conversations. But there are many dangerous parts of digital landscape. And that is where I would like to connect your questioning, my questioning, and point one fascinating innovation which was made in Europe and which is not enough expressed, which is the RGPD, data privacy. That is a design innovation if we look into complex systems thinking. Let me expand on that one. What we have seen at IxDA or on Pechacha Forum is we need code of conduct. So I'm connecting your question of democracy with code of conduct, with what is happening in the everyday life, with what European Commission did with the RGPD. Stressing towards the big players, GAFA, that we need to set up what I call digital urban systems. Any city, we have been talking about cities this morning, be it small, big, medium, has urban designers and urban policymakers who are trying to make sure that what we call in French, le savoir-vivre ensemble, being together, creating common space, is also needed in the digital landscape. And what we need to think about, jumping on your keyword of democracy, I'm connecting that to how can we live together? How can we create commons? How can we create commonalities and common space where we have better life? How can we create situation where we better human and humanity thanks to digital as an enabler, as a tool? Because Päivi, you mentioned, yes, the two examples are possible thanks to digital. I would argue yes, but as a mean, not as an end. And we need to be sure and focus that as designers, we are obsessed by the questioning of how. How are we going to solve that situation so it becomes a better situation? And someone was mentioning this morning, it's Xavier Troussard. He was mentioning as designer, let's make sure that we work on things that has not been worked. I'm rephrasing with my words. DG and JRC, when they are working with some DGs, if you come to work on design stuff, make stuff that you have not done. That is for me the key trigger of what should be our obsession. How are we going to change situation? Be careful, I'm not talking about problems. I'm talking about change of situation, because problem solution is too narrow. A hammer looks for what? You see, that dialogic thinking, I think we need to go beyond. And conversations like this one and some others allow to go beyond white and black dialogic, go into nuance, more complex languages, alignments, and push ourselves into exploring the next, which doesn't exist yet. That is the magic of why we are missing real life meetings. We are here sitting in front of our screens, but we are missing the in-betweenness of going live into an event and meet and talk with someone drinking a cafe or a beer and coming with some ideas which we would not have. So design is about pushing these zones of in-betweenness and otherness that we are trying to make sure. When I was telling with IxDA or with my Pechacha nights, how can we let it flow so that we have these happy accidents of coincidence of ideas? And create that in a policy-making world is complex. It requires trust, it requires trying some other modes of sharing knowledge, which are to be orchestrated. You mentioned, if I remember, top-down and bottom-up needs to be articulated together. I'll add a third dimension. It is top down, bottom up, and next door. If we have not been to a place which we think might be interesting, how can we create conditions to go next door? Which comes back to the theme of this afternoon. How can we go and check what is happening in Singapore, in Nairobi, in Johannesburg, in Bogota? Because there are fascinating things happening in Bogota. People don't know that Bogota has got some fascinating urban design decisions which made Bogota much more interesting and change of situation in 20 years. How can we be inspired by that? Climate change is a global problem. So we need to open up eyes and look into mega hyper house. House means house, Bauhaus. But I think we need to be moving into hyper Bauhaus. We need to construct the hyper connected realities of multiple realities which is happening on the planet. And innovation is a bizarre, paradoxical word. We talk a lot about innovation. Look at the tons of policy with the word innovation. Innovation can happen when only it has been experienced. And innovation has been used as a word of we are projecting into something which yet doesn't exist. And there is confusion between innovation, creativity, design in many places. So as policymakers, we need to have clarification of languages. Design is a polysemic word. It has multiple notions. And it's like health. Healthcare can be preventive, healthcare can be curative. If we look at all the activities in the healthcare, 80% is focused in terms of policy actions into the curative, not enough into the preventive. That's why we are in this pandemic situation, bottom up. And we need to be provocative and say, okay, how are we zooming in, zooming out? How do we understand what is happening in the healthcare sector? Remember, medicine 120 years ago was not so scientific as today. Medicine 400 years ago was magic. From magic to pseudoscience to science, medicine has gone through a fascinating journey. Design is going through that journey, and we need to get much more mature because doing good design is complex, requires both to be analytical and synthetical, requires to be human-centered, humanity-centered, but also understand materiality. So I'm trying to say that your question of democracy triggers so many topics that our job as designers is to be able to jump in, jump out, jump next, and say, okay, how are we going to orchestrate meaningful conversations? This morning you had the word meaningful, but what is meaningful to you might be not meaningful to me. How do we create this in-betweenness where we have shared meaningfulness is what I would suggest us to work as designers and begin to have this kind of lateral journeys. I know that I have been quite far out of your questioning zone, but I hope that it allows us to begin to think about interconnected modalities in different ways. Päivi.
So thank you, Alok. You are absolutely correct. You can go different paths very easily. We know that, but and we would need to come back to my original question to a certain degree. We will do that in a later phase, depending on where the discussion will move in the next phase. Thank you for raising up a lot of important questions and a lot of important approaches. Again, I will ask Fabrizio, is there anything we would need to react in the chat from your point of view at the moment?
Well, actually, there was an interesting question by Ingrid that was highlighting if the format of Pechkucha was the format itself was limiting the participation to people that can easily talk. So considering that we are talking about interaction and technology and innovation, this might be an interesting point to face.
Thanks, Ingrid. If I may jump in. The initial Pechkucha format began as 400 seconds and 20 images times 20 seconds. And it can be infinite if you are not a good speaker. And what happened is, interestingly, during COVID, Pechkucha moved completely online and explored 5 images, 20 seconds, 10 images, 20 seconds. So to answer to your question, Ingrid, The format has itself proposed some more modular approach so that you can share that in more confident ways. Now remember, Pechakucha is only one way of sharing stories. It's up to us designers to invent conditions for having those conversations flowing. And with Ingrid, we have been busy many years ago talking about co-creation. How do we co-create and how do we co-design? And what's the difference between the two? These are questions we were busy 12 years ago, if I remember. And these questions are so valid today. And if we look at the history of our appropriation of the notion of co-creation, storytelling, prototyping, in the last 5 years, there has been so much interesting evolution that we need to sit all together and align, re-update, reboot ourselves on this notion of what does it mean co-design today? And how does it impact democracy, as Päivi was suggesting? And how does it imply us to get the appropriation of the notion of climate change by everyday citizen? Because that is our obsession. How to make sure that we are not lost in our jargon of co-creation, which is understood differently, and co-design, which is understood again differently by some MBA fellows who have got their 5 hours design thinking workshop. And after 5 hours design thinking workshop, they think they're the design guru. And then they come you and they brainwash you with the stupid 5 steps method. Say, come on, we are all designers and design addicts. Let's be critical and say, come on, you don't do design in 5 hours. Would you go to a heart surgeon who had a 2 days workshop and who will do an open heart surgery? So these are my provocations there.
Yeah. Alok, very provocative indeed. Just to sort of try to paint more complete, not a complete, no way, but more complete picture in relation to expertise. What you just said about design professionalism is an interesting issue. But in all fairness, what happens with the designers all the time is that they work on issues they know very little about as well. So let's sort of, we can continue this discussion as well. But I think this is not only related to designers or people who call them designers who have been trained a few hours. We do the same thing in other context. I think what we need to do now is, Isabelle, you to introduce the next one of our invited experts, and we will continue this. This will be interaction between the speakers as well. So go ahead, Isabelle.
Yes, and thank you, Alok, to make the transition with our second guest, who is Eija Salmi, because you make the link with the education and the need to know what is design and that everybody knows exactly what is design. So I would like to introduce you, Eija. Eija is the Secretary General of Cumulus, International Association of University and College of Art, Design and Media. You are also head of international affairs at the School of Arts, Design and Architecture, Aalto University in Finland. And what is the role of this strong community of our students? Because we are talking for the future, but our students are the actors of the future. And if we want to be sure that all the people is engaged in this initiative of the New European Bauhaus, are more generally in this thinking to save the planet and to take care of the people. What is the role of this community and the role of the schools, the university themselves, because it's a big challenge. So Eija, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting. A couple of words about Cumulus, that was founded 30 years ago in 1990, and we're becoming, I hope, the only global association representing education and research in art, design and media, strongly design focused. Don't ask me what is the semantical definition of design, but anyway, 340 universities from 61 countries, 155 for the moment, based in Europe. The membership is growing. As Isabel introduced, and thanks to Alok, actually, you were saying almost everything. Some in other wording, I was considering to inspire the audience that if successful, Cumulus can reach over 1 million students. I mean, it's not dependent on me or the team here. It's also the responsibility of the members, the universities. And this is the big issue for me. What is the responsibility of the universities, including not only students, but academics and staff, and ensuring how academics are teaching, working with the students, enabling them to what's the right wording, follow sustainability, not only follow and understand. My big question is, what is the impact? What is really the impact of the younger generation, how they can contribute to this planet that we maintain ourselves sustainable and going on strongly. Couple of words back that Cumulus initiated Kyoto Design Declaration. You might be finding some information on our website as well as in Wikipedia. In 2008, endorsed by World Design Organization and a couple of others. At least for me, it was sort of flagship tool before SDGs were founded, that there is responsibility among ourselves, I mean, not only as educators, but designers, and further to impact business and industry with the sustainability, not as a message only. Sustainability, I've been saying this in some other contexts, was roughly lifted up in design education in the 80s by Ezio Mancini, a famous professor once working for Politecnico di Milano. Alok was talking about from meta communities and then to the bottom guys, individuals. So in Cumulus, what can we do, how we can do? We have conferences, we collaborate with IxDN, BEDA, invite people to have their say. Excellent. What I'm worried about, and getting back to my first sentence, is that how do we ensure any projects live further? What is the impact? How we ensure business implements the design sustainability knowledge? We can't be only among ourselves as professionals and educators and researchers. We have to accelerate this cycle to be not a vicious one, but a positive, impactful one. Responsibility of the universities. A number of you guys, you are also teaching. My question is, who rules? Is it the government? If it's a governmental university, who rules and for what if it's a private university? We know that governmental universities are often funded based on key performance indicators. My question is who is defining them? Is academic community able to lift up, pinpoint, underline, help me with the English language, that sustainability, one way or other measured, is important to be part of the funding model. Money talks, and money talks everywhere. It's not only the good thinking and getting together. Getting together, I'm saying networking is power, like an institution like Cumulus. So by sharing things together, things get running forward. But back to the bottom-up thing, the individual, that what is the responsibility of the individual? Us as individuals, educator as an individual, to deliver further good things to the students that they can then further deliver excellence in terms of sustainability to the planet. So sorry, I'm surfing back and forth on playing tennis, but it's like Alok said, trust, engagement for better life, as one example of how Cumulus has been able to impact, we had in 2002 a massive exhibition in Louvre in Paris. It was called European Ways of Life, and this was already, I guess, impacting the thinking of the university leaders that they have to really build up communities and not as silos, impacting for, climate change. Oh, I think that's all. I've been surfing back and forth, but impact and outcome, and not so that it's an outcome of a doctorate research that it's maintained in the library or somewhere in online and nobody is using that. So there is massive amount of things that we have to work together further.
Thank you, Eija. A lot of issues we could continue discussing, and I'm sure we will once the participant will come into and join the discussion as well. But there's maybe one thing the first thing I would like to ask you is when you talk about Cumulus network, a really impressive network with such a big number of universities all over the world, and you talk about students, and you talk about the academics. You talk about the impact of students graduating, well, for example, graduating students having an impact in industry, etc. You talk about the impact of educators, the academics on society, if I'm following you correctly. But my question, and this is also referring to what Alok has been talking about, putting together the current generations of students and that, let's say, for example, digitalization in current academic environments, who is educating who in the end? Because what happens at the moment, to my understanding, is that our young people, young university students, they are really very well educated in many issues already, and not necessarily because of the academic staff, but because of a lot what they do outside the immediate academic environment. So how would you see this? Does this change in a way have an impact in the way our students are educated or not?
Yeah, this question was one way or other embedded in my flow. I've also been thinking about the issue who teaches and who teaches what. Also, you to consider how do we recruit, how we lasso students to study. Do we offer possibility to everybody to study? Who are those youngsters? I mean, not only university youngsters. I think it was referred to in Alok's presentation that they are clever. They know one way or other what to do and how to contribute, but I'm getting back that we have to use this knowledge. Päivi asked me or have a say that dialogue is not enough, development is not enough if there is no outcome.
Yeah, can you elaborate a bit, Eija? What kind of steps would you say that are needed to make that happen, to go a few steps further from where you say we are at the moment?
Alok was putting there in the chat, PRE is one example of a tool that we welcome business, industry, profession, and educators and students together. That it builds up networking, it builds up bridges outside any law that dictates the share owners, that there will be an impact, that we can impact taxation, that these things happen. A government could be creating a design youngsters tool that if these performance indicators are met, the individual even gets taxation release. Or, I mean, Yeah, I think I can't answer you. All other guys are better to answer that than I am. But my point is just to welcome people, be together and figure out mechanisms to really impact and go beyond any, I mean, blah, blah, blah is nasty to say, but it's good to talk, but then how discussion really impacts our behavior.
Mm. Maybe this is something on which we can come back also, and from the point of view, Alok, you were using the two examples, IxDA and Pechacha, as creating new types of communities, if I may allow that, to use that word. Now, what I would ask Fabrizio again, any interventions?
Not really. An interesting discussion between Michael and Alok, which is shared to everybody. But no, actually not a direct question. Perhaps Alok is raising the head.
Yes, go ahead, Alok.
Yeah, if I may pong with Eija on this PRE, professionals meeting researchers, meeting educators. We launched that a few years ago, and the ambition there was to see how can professional input into the design of curricula which are made by educators. Because what we saw is that in many schools, the education programs were still tailored, I would say, 20th century. And in 15 years, the practice of design has changed so much that, as Eija mentioned, who's teaching what to whom? And we saw in many design schools, in many colleges, that in fact, the young people knew more than the so-called teachers, experts, professors in how they manage digital tools, how they create new ideas and stuff like that. So if I connect New European Bauhaus to BEDA, to Cumulus, to what is happening in design schools, how can we make sure that this transmission and creation of knowledge is accelerated with an appropriation which is more 21st century than 20th century, is a complex challenge that we need to work on, and which might feed back into the questions you came up, Isabel and Päivi, about climate change and related, because we are talking about behavioral changes. And young people, they don't wait for the inertia that we have with some other generations. You know, in some projects, the best way to get innovation is to get rid of all the previous generation and come with a new generation, and that creates acceleration. How can we trigger that? By not killing the previous, but by building on the shoulder of the other and revisiting education systems and stuff like that. And I'm talking about that because it comes into resonance with what Eija was sharing and what we are trying to prototype in the PRE series. Professionals meeting researchers, meeting educators. Now, we have been talking about educators. We am having the hat of professional, but one hat that maybe we haven't talked enough and we'll talk later is research. What do we mean by research today in 2021 compared to research and innovation in the end 20th century? How can we revisit our modalities of researching and creating knowledge? Because good research is creating good knowledge, but that doesn't mean that good knowledge is creating good actions in the everyday. How are we revisiting research agenda? And that is where I think NEB and BEDA have a fundamental role in pushing European Commission's research agenda by looking at some other KPIs, because Eija mentioned the word performance indicators. What is research today, which is interesting in the short run, mid run, long run, which allows to explore the future in ways which were not expected? Because research is that sweet spot where we need to expand possibilities, where we need to look at zones of probabilities which we can prototype. And that is where we have fascinating challenges that we need to interconnect with all these conversations and look back at these three pillars and the virtuous circle that we are trying to create between professionals, researchers, and educators, and stop silo thinking. And that is one part of the game that we are in.
Thank you, Alok. This is indeed a very interesting topic, with the addition to what you just said, that design is also part of research. So it's not as if it was the three separate issues: design, research, and education. It's more sort of integrate or more merged than what we often think, to my mind. Just a comment on what you said, Alok, as well. I think this would relate quite well to issues that were discussed in the earlier sessions today. And I see that Mari Savio is still taking part, attending. And a reminder to Mari, maybe if you want to come up with some thoughts later, how would this, what Alok said about education, how would that connect to, and how the younger generations are heard and listened to? I think that connects directly to what is being done in Europe, also in the context of the New European Bauhaus initiative, in relation to the very young people, school kids, etc., because their understanding of knowledge, their understanding of design, and the direct ways to have an impact is quite something different from us older generations as well. May I now ask Isabel, you to present, introduce our next expert.
With pleasure. So we will continue our reflection, our path on education and research. And I have the pleasure to introduce you Brigitte Trousse. So we will add another dimension, not only design, but because Brigitte is a senior researcher in artificial intelligence and user-driven design at Inria, at Université Côte d'Azur in France. She is also a founding member of ENoLL, European Network of Living Lab, and member of ENoLL Board of Director, representing France and Francophonie Living Lab at ICT Usage Lab. So now we could continue the discussion on research, education, and also how engage all the people, how engage the users, all the citizens. It's the goal of the Living Lab. But first of all, Brigitte, if you would like to explain us what is ENoLL exactly, because maybe not everybody is knowing what is ENoLL. So Brigitte, the floor is yours. And if you want to share your presentation, feel free to get the floor.
Brigitte, may I just say one thing? I see that Mari Savio has raised her hand for a comment, but my question is to Mari. Please hold to your comment, and we'll come back to that later once Brigitte has had her chance to present. So Brigitte, please.
Brigitte, you need to open your microphone. Okay, it works. Just, yeah, perfect.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me to this forum. It's a real pleasure to be with you. So I have a difficult task and to present a lot of things in a short time, but concerning ENoLL, so European Network of Living Lab, it's a global network of open innovation ecosystems that place people in the center of this ecosystem for product or service design and development and innovation. So to give some keywords for the history, because it's a long story, but it's some keywords for us, for ENoLL. When we speak about Living Lab, so the main reference is open innovation from Chessbook. So we speak about, when we speak about Living Lab, is open innovation. And we have a publication from Chessbook in 2003. Another thing is also von Hippel quantifies the notion of lead users in order to address disruptive innovation. So von Hippel around 1986. And finally, the word of Living Lab and the concept of Living Lab is coming around the years of 2000 from the MIT Media Lab, from the professor William Mitchell. And but the users in this case, it was more observed. They are not really actors. They are not participating in co-creation, something like this. But the word Living Lab was introduced by Professor Mitchell around 2000. And finally, in the Strategy of Lisbon in 2005, we speak about knowledge economy. And it was from this date, from 2005 or 2006, during the Finnish presidency, that there is a manifesto concerning Living Lab in 2006, promoting the concept of Living Lab. And this concept in Europe is more recognize the experiential knowledge of a user, of a people. And we speak about the quadruple helix. That means you have a classical social group. So you have academics, you have industry, business part. You have also government or local territories, or something like this. Plus, we add the people. So the people we are not working for them, we are working with them. So we have four social groups in a quadruple helix, and it is also a term very connected to Living Lab. So concerning Living Lab, so I can share, if you want, exactly what you said. What I want also to explain I give you a definition from ENoLL about also what is Living Lab. So I have to share. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Écran, hop. So you can see here, so the European Network of Living Labs was formed in 2006. It was an informal network. And we create an association, a Belgian association in 2010. But from 2006, we label ecosystem. So the first wave of labeling Living Labs, the organization as Living Lab, started in 2006. And in France, I was in the Living Lab, well, the first Living Lab in France, labeled in 2006. It was the ICT Usage Lab. So, and we promote, as I said before, user-driven innovation ecosystem, and mainly the Living Lab concept. You see the member, we have about 90% of members from Europe, but we have 10 to 12% outside Europe. Sorry. You see also our objective is we label about more than 400 members. Perhaps they are not adherent to the association today, but we label a lot. In France, it was around more 60 structure. And we try to influence also European policy to promote Living Lab and to enabling their implementation in the world. And you can see, for example, we have 9 Living Lab in Asia, 4 in America, in Quebec, for example, in Canada, Quebec, 2 in Africa, and 3 Oceania, in Australia. So we have in the world a lot of Living Labs. So this is the objective in the bylaw, in our bylaw. What is important also is to see that we try to influence policy at the European level and to promote innovation co-creation, and also to everything linked to open science, social innovation, and so on. What I didn't say before is also when you speak about Living Lab, it's correlated to social innovation, technological innovation, but also societal innovation. So we mainly want to address social and societal innovation mainly, finally. And here is the definition of from ENoLL, or what are living labs. So there are a lot of definition of because we have different point of view, but this definition is on the website of ENoLL. Living lab are open innovation ecosystem in real life environment. So it's not experiment in at the university and usage lab. No, we have to experiment in real life situation based on a systematic user co-creation approach that integrates research and innovation activities in communities, placing citizens at the center of innovation. We have no, when you speak about living lab, we have two notions. Living lab as an ecosystem or as a macro level, if you want. It is what we label. And sometimes we use the living lab to speak about the approach, living lab approach, the living lab methodology. So in a living lab, as a structure, they can deploy different projects based on the living lab approach. And the living lab approach is a nonlinear, is a process, is an iterative process. This process shows the value co-creation, the co-creation of value from the people. It's a non-linear process. We see research innovation. So we put everybody around the table. So we have a quadruple helix. So you can have around the table the people, the experts in IoT, or I don't know, artificial intelligence, or sensors. You can have people from the municipality and people. So you have all people around the table. So of course we need to have strong facilitations method to allow that all people can express their ideas, or you can make different solutions. So don't make a distinction between living lab at the macro level, as an ecosystem, concerning the governments, concerning the chapter, which value they share, all the stakeholders of this organization, and a project based on a living lab approach. Here we refer to the living lab methodology, and in the living labs in ENoLL, we have different process based on the living lab approach. We have not only one. So to say to you quickly, it's an iterative process. Generally, for one cycle, you find co-creation and exploration step. Then you have experiment, prototyping, and experimentation, and evaluation. So you have, this is one, you have 4 or 3 steps according to the living lab. And after, we have to show, after the evaluation, you have to show the value created by the people and to start a new cycle. So to demonstrate the living lab approach, we need to make 2 versions of something, 2 versions of the services, 2 versions of a product, or to evaluate, to evaluate what the KPI with the first version and the second version. So it's not a question of quantity of user involved, but it's more about which value was created by them. All the living labs, you can see the 4 helix in the schema: government, industry, academy, and people is the civil society. And all the living labs share more or less the different things we have on the right. So cooperation, multi-method approach, active user involvement, real life setting, multi-stakeholder participation. So this is too long to perhaps comment, but it's clear that we address social innovation. We also are very address the link between research and civil society, open science, a different level of open science, and also we want the vision of ENoLL is to inspire everyone to innovate. You can take this sentence and with different point of view. You can take this sentence in terms of education. What are the skills I have to transmit in order that everybody are able to innovate. You can think about economy, the new economical model, if everybody are able to innovate and so on. So we can take this of politics and something. So we want to do this. And also what we need, we see today is an explosion of labs. So I am speaking about living labs, but you have fab labs, you have ID labs, you have learning labs, you have different types of labs. So in ENoLL, we are speaking about collatory. It is the colon in the center. We are speaking about collatory. It's a lab of labs, if you want. And our ambition is also to have this bottom-up innovation process between all these labs at the European level or in the world, and also to start from the local policy, and it's all. I think it's too long. And to answer to another question asked me Isabel to prepare is also the link between ENoLL perhaps and the new European Bauhaus initiative. We have different task force. It is because we have a critical mass of living lab on these 5 task force you see on the screen. And of course, concerning the new European Bauhaus initiative, the social innovation and digital rights might be very relevant, and also energy environment is already relevant, and perhaps also the others such as artificial or something like this. Rural living lab concerning rural living lab, you have subgroup about agriculture, agri-food. Concerning energy environment, you have another group, a subgroup is mobility. And concerning social innovation and digital rights, there is a first kickoff meeting of a subgroup. It was the 8th of June. It's open to everybody. It is about culture and co-creativity. So I asked to the chair of the task force, social innovation and digital rights, if they are relevant to the new European Bauhaus, and they say yes, of course, and mainly also because there is this group concerning culture and co-creativity. So I think it's all, yeah. I think if I have something else to say, but if you have some, I mean, I want also to say just one thing. We have a lot of living labs, and some living labs are more application domain oriented. So some living labs are more for energy, for smart cities, blah, 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 blah. And you have also other living labs who are more transversal. So you have Isabel and myself, we are in this case. So, for example, the case of the living lab led by the City of Design is more design methods, and she's not specific one application domain. So she can apply their expertise in different application domains. And for my living lab, it was ICT usage lab. It was also expert in ICT, and we apply this for mobility, we apply this for energy, for different application domains. So we can find among the living labs in ENoLL, some were more transversal, others were more application domain, and the third type of living labs is territorial living labs. So we are more the location of the living labs is more very strong link with the territory. So sometimes it's a territorial living lab as led by the local authority, but perhaps not, but we call them territorial living labs. And
thank you, Brigitte, very much for your great insight on living labs. I'm sure this was quite thought-provoking in the context of New European Bauhaus initiative as well. We would now move on to the last of our experts, I believe, Isabel, and then hopefully we will have time to come back to your questions and comments still before we close this session.
Yes,
Isabel.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, Päivi. And as Brigitte talked about territorial living lab, I think our last but not least speaker, Luther Kennem, could give us a wonderful example of territorial living lab with Lille Métropole. So I have the pleasure to introduce Luther Kennem. You are public policies lab manager and designers at Lille Métropole, and you are the great experience with Lille as world design capital during the pandemic. So it was a typical and very difficult, but you succeed to involve the people in your living lab. So you could explain us how is it, and also to give to open the doors as an international level, because World Design Capital, so it's something international, not only European, and you have the other hat to be member of the high level roundtable of the New European Bauhaus. So if you could make the link with these two points, the floor is yours, Luther.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for inviting me to say some words about those things. I joined la Métropole Européenne de Lille 1 year ago to start the Public Policy Lab. At first, I was not exactly reluctant, but yeah, I was not completely sure because I was supposed to join a public organization, and I used to work in private companies. And in France, public organizations they have that reputation of being kind of slow, rusty, and old-fashioned. And I actually realized and discovered that Lille Métropole was already in the middle of a very long process of evolving and integrating design. It actually started a couple of years ago, I would say 3, maybe 4 years ago, with the opening and the starting of research and development direction that led to the launch of what we call here a Transfo, which is actually a program where a French association dedicated to public organizations transformation help a public organization to start and to define the outlines of its lab. So that was one of the first steps. Of course, after that, we had the World Design Capital, which was also a very important milestone in that story of evolving from a traditional public organization to something more modern and contemporary. So I actually, very quickly realized that there were many proof and evidence that the design was already being integrated. The interesting thing with the World Design Capital was that the aim was to involve the whole territory into that design dynamic, and to involve different actors, organization into this. Could be public organizations, could be private also, associations too. And that dynamic also ended up with the opening of the lab. What we're doing right now, it's we are a very small team of 3 people. We share and we gather together expertise about the collective intelligence and design. And our aim here is to make sure that at some point those 2 expertise will become part of the culture of the organization. So I really like that, because this is probably the first time I'm hearing this, where the exact goal is to transform and to change the culture of the organization. It's not about having a lot of designers. It's not about doing design. It's about making design and cultural intelligence a part of the collective intelligence, a part of the culture itself. And what we're doing concretely is to, I would say, pass on this culture through a very concrete project and experimentation. What we say usually here is that we are trying to transform the products, basically what the organization is producing in terms of spaces, equipment, public policies, services, of course, but we're also trying to change I would say the machine, the factory itself, which is basically the organization, the way it works. Because if you want to produce something new, you need to change your tools, you need to change your recipes, you need to change your ingredients. And this is actually what we're trying to do as well. I would say that the link between the New European Bauhaus and what we did in Lille in terms of World Design Capital is that in both initiatives, the goal and the challenge is to be able to enable a collective dynamic and a dynamic over a territory. And this is very not easy. Quite difficult. So what we achieve in the World Design Capital is that all the organizations involved, so like I said, companies, private organizations, and public organizations were supposed to submit what we call POC, proof of concepts, basically experimentations and experimental project, to be able to be allowed to take part of the to be part of the event. So every organization had somehow to go through for real and to experience a design process. And this was probably the best way to spread the word, to spread the principles, and to make sure that many people as possible can understand what design can bring and what are the added values, and how we can change also the way we do and we can do things. And this was done through the experience, through experiencing what a design process is by doing an actual project with designers. So I think that somehow this is probably one of the things we could achieve also at the New European Bauhaus level. I think the idea is already to have different pilots across the union, maybe more than 5, and it's probably one of the things we should keep in mind, that the fact that the best way to acculturate people, the best way to how to say that, to gather people around something or to reach out to people is to make them experience something and to make them go through something. I would say that one of the things I really believe is that design is strongly efficient when it comes to produce desirable narratives, and especially out of complexity. And I think that what we should do in this New European Bauhaus initiative is to put more design in it, more than we have already. And also think that while science is there to explain, I mean, natural sciences, social sciences are there to explain the world we're living in, different phenomena. I think that the real added values of a value of the design is to be able to propose very concrete solutions, to propose very concrete stories, to propose very concrete narratives that are desirable, engaging, and that really involve people. One of the most important guidelines in the New European Bauhaus is the inclusiveness. And I think it starts also with bringing different people with different work experience and professional background together around the same table, and to be able to work together. I mean, designers can, let's say, easily work with other designers. Architects can work also with architects. A cook can work with a cook. But when you have to make a cook, an architect, and a designer works together, this is another story, and this is probably something difficult. But I really think that somehow the design process, design methodology is one of the most efficient thing to make different backgrounds work together. But beyond that, I think that being inclusive, how to say that, it's also about including people that doesn't have anything to do with architecture, design, and all of those, I would say, milieu in French. And one of the risks we have in the New European Bauhaus, not only the high-level roundtable, not only the GRC team, not only the union, but all together, I mean, all of you guys here too, the challenge we have is to not stay just amongst us with designers, architects, and but to be able to reach out to, I don't want to say that way, but everyday people. Everyday people. So it means that we have to go back to the field. We have to be able to create those conversations we are expected to create with many different type of people, workers, I don't know, bakers, I don't know, a very diverse type of people. And what we should support is and foster is those conversation with with those everyday people. I usually take that example we had in France with the yellow vests. Yellow vests were completely, I would say, UFOs in many aspects. First, they were not a typical type. They were not the typical type of people who are demonstrating in France usually. In France usually, they were not known from unions and political organization. Actually, most of them were people who were demonstrating and protesting for the first time of their life, and they had something to say. They had concern. They had fears too. And at first, like many people with my background, I was like, yeah, what do they want actually? Are they just shouting out for more gasoline or something? And it took me some time to understand what they really wanted and the fact that they were actually very legit. And my concern today is how do we reach out to those kind of people in such initiative as New European Bauhaus? And I think that if we're not able to do that and to do so, we would have probably failed somehow. And this is probably this is what I think and what I believe in this initiative is I think it will be a complete success if we are able to force ourselves to go beyond our comfort zone, as we usually say, and to reach out to a different type of population and a diverse population.
Thank you, Luther. I think we could not, well, who am I to speak for anyone else, but I want to say that I could not agree with you more with the ambition you described as part of the New European Bauhaus initiative, going across disciplines, going across different types of people, organizations, etc. But what I'm happy to say on this regards is that I see this happening in different parts of Europe already. Not probably enough, but it is happening already. And it's my experience from BEDA point of view that the change the New European Bauhaus initiative has already made into within Europe to some extent is the new way to communicate across disciplines. And I'm definitely saying this is not enough yet, but it's a very good start. So from that point of view, I say that the initiative has already had a success. How we can then expand this is another question. And I think I believe we have today, this session, but also in the two other sessions, heard many points of view, a good insight on how we can expand in that direction. So very much thank you to you, Luther. We have a few minutes left. I would now like to ask Fabrizio if there are any questions for Brigitte, for Luther at this point, or to anyone else before. And I will happily save 1 minute to Mari, who has been holding her hand for quite a long time already. But give me, Fabrizio, if you can give an update on if there are many questions there already.
Let's say that there is the request of the possibility of having Brigitte's presentation in the end. And I would add also, if it's possible to have all the presentation of today available to the participant, including the many links that were shared in the chat with all the references as it was asked to me by other people. A couple of suggestion on if lab was a name that is highlighting a little bit, let's say, a more scientific approach, if could be, I don't know, an alternative like studio or garage explaining better what you are doing. Of course, it's not a proposal of changing the name, I think, at this level, but just to understand the spirit better. And then there is a final comment on by Rosina on Luther intervention about diversity and inclusion. Then again, who I am to say, but I totally agree about it's include not only like-minded people, but try to understand those who are not thinking like us. That I think it's, in my opinion, is not a question, but it's joining my comment to the question on the chat is really the point. No, not to find themselves not only among discipline, but also not finding themselves only with people that think like us. And the example that you were making, Luther, was really, really up to the point to me.
Thank you, Fabrizio. That was,
you're welcome.
That was really good point of view towards the end of our session and our day as well. Mari, maybe what you could do now is to use 1 minute. Apologies for asking you to be very brief, but you wanted to ask or comment on an earlier speaker, if I'm not mistaken, and the discussion that was going on.
Yes, and this actually has a lot to do with what Luther was just saying about going to the fields, which sounds like Sound of Music a bit, but I'm from a Finnish Design Learning Association called Suomu, and we are working with kids and young people, developing co-designing together with them, and for instance, working on the Finnish curriculum together with the kids and students. And what I wanted to comment on the earlier discussion was that design and all the methodology works the best with kids and young people because they have been using it since they were born. And they don't know the words, but they really are living in it, and they have amazing potential to give more. And I think it would be really important to talk to them in their own way, because they don't belong in the organizations, and they are not in the systems. They are not in these forums that usually talk about these things. And New European Bauhaus sort of needs to go to young people. They don't come to the system because they are scared of us. So I think it's, but it's it's not very complicated, and it is something that we have tested quite a lot. And there's this simple way of doing it, is like including them in the design process, is just to working together with them so that they feel equal in that sense, that they are part and they are heard. And it doesn't work with inquiries or the way that the organizations usually work. It could work something that you were just mentioning about going to the field, that they are there, and they are in schools, and they are in universities, and they have a lot to say, and they know how to say it if we just go to their channels and go to where they are.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. What I would even like to say is that what you now said in relation to children is true with anyone. The respect you show to people you work with is probably one of the critical issues if you want to make a design process, or any process for that matter, a success. And also I think this relates a lot to what we have been talking about: trust, meaningfulness. This is a way to create trust and to create meaningfulness. I have been thinking about one word throughout the sessions today in the context of a lot of what we have talked in relation to trust, etc., and the way we do things. And I think the word is ownership. I think if you become an owner of the issue, the topic, the work, and the process as well, the outcome is something where you feel that you can have an impact in, that you are taken seriously. I think that's one of the they are important prerequisites to make a design process a success as well. I saw that that Alok raised his hand. I will give you a very quick comment because we need to close the session now, but a quick comment, Alok.
Yeah, thanks, Päivi. And in resonance with what you said and what Marie and Luther was mentioning, one of the focus I try to work always is how to learn to unlearn and relearn. And if I jump on what Marie was talking about the kids, they have the ability to relearn and unlearn in very quick ways. And I'll connect that to your notion of ownership, which I will expand to entrepreneurship. And in French, entrepreneur means prendre en main, taking control of, taking ownership. And we need to revisit notions of entrepreneurship in less romantic ways and more designerly ways. That would be my connections with the number of topics I've heard so far. And education and entrepreneurship needs to be reconnected in multiple ways. Thanks, Päivi.
Thank you, Alok. Now it is my and Isabel's shared pleasure to thank you all for taking part. Some of you have taken part throughout the day. I thank you all for that dedication. And some of you have been hopping in and out. Some of you have only listened one session. All models are equally good. We are happy for every intervention, every input, every attendance you have shown today and been with us. Proud to have been part of this, and we will come back, Isabel, don't we, with the recordings and with the chat, with the links and the presentations. Maybe you already can say when and where they will be shared, so that everyone who has been with us today, and even more those who didn't have a possibility to be with us, can come and join and share their points of view later as well.
I think that the best place is the BEDA website. So you could think the link on our BEDA website for all the elements, the chat, the link. And we hope that this event is a beginning of a lot of collaboration, a lot of stories that we could develop all together. But it's not finished yet. And if you would like to continue the discussion in the Wonder Room, which is a place special for discussion, Maria, which is part of our, who is part of our team, will explain you how to join the Wonder Room if you haven't tested it yet. She put the link in the chat again. So because some of you have registered to have a virtual visit of the exhibition that we have in Saint-Étienne, FLOP, because we try to make you live a little bit Saint-Étienne. So waiting that you will come for next Biennale in 2002, we have offered you the possibility to have some virtual visit. The next visit for who is registered is at 4 o'clock. So waiting that you could come join and stay in the Wonder Room. And I would like to thank all the Cité du Design team and all the participants. Päivi, for sure, thank you so much for all. I'm so proud to be with you in this big adventure that we live with BEDA. And I would like to let you the last word to close this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. This is a joint effort, certainly. So I very much want to thank you once more. This will be my last intervention with you as president of BEDA. Those of you who will join us, BEDA members who will join us tomorrow in our General Assembly, I just want to remind you that this will happen tomorrow. You have hopefully all the information and material for that, and we will see you tomorrow. And hopefully many of you we will see in the Wonder platform, just as Isabel just said. But for the rest, I very much look forward to events to follow as a sort of a spin-off from this as well, because what we have to remember is that we always rely, we always continue work that has already been done, whether it's radically new or whether it's something which is a direct continuation. We are a part of a longer chain that will stretch to the past and will stretch to the future. So hopefully this is a building block in towards something very interesting and inspiring, and something that will be part of creating the transformation we need in Europe and in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Special thanks for Päivi. And then you could see Maria, Sonia, Inger, and a lot of girls, Trifen, Marion, Mayan. This is all the only girl from Cité du Design team who make these events happen. So Maria, if you could help us to join you in the Wonder Room, see you soon. And if not, see you next to continue this with you. Maria.
Okay, yeah, hi.